But let's go ahead and move on to this one. This is the Chris Hedges. I really like Chris Hedges. I think he's an incredible reporter. Honestly, I don't have like any real like any bad things to say or whatever. And he always like he even helped educate me on like some of the some because so he's kind of like a Christian or whatever. Like I think he, but like he's like one of the good ones, you know. Like he is like I think a very charitable person and like wants to do good by humanity, that kind of person or whatever. Um, but he at first I was a little bit turned off by his like moral purity stuff sometimes. Um, but he did explain in a pretty decent way about the moral degradation of society as like as it descends into like late stage capitalism or whatever. And at first I thought it was a little puritanical and like kind of but like as I've kind of thought about it more, I do think he's right to an extent. I just don't like how sometimes it feels a little like I don't know. Anyway, this is a big tangent, but this is about Iran. This isn't about whatever the fuck I was just talking about. So let's go ahead and watch this. This is with Yanis Varoufakis. The war in Iran will have devastating economic effects. The Chris Hedges YouTube channel.
I want to begin, Giannis, with the consequences of economic dislocation in terms of societal unrest, political unrest. I think back to my coverage of the war in the former Yugoslavia that was precipitated by an economic meltdown and hyperinflation, which I believe contributed to the vomiting up of these Trump-like figures, Radovan Karadzic, etc.
Such a way
But
with
this
words.
economic dislocation has always, throughout history, consequences that extend far beyond, economic punishment. And I just wondered if you can talk about that.
Sure, you are referring to the unintended consequences of a very stupid war into which
I'm sure
Donald
there's
Trump
gonna
has
be
been
lots of them.
trapped by Benjamin Netanyahu. Because, Chris, uh, up until now, I think that Trump was winning everything. He won the trade war, the tariff war with the Europeans. He was
Well,
very successful.
that's not a very difficult thing to win. The Europeans are little peons to America empire. So, yeah, of course they were gonna like turn around, pull down their pants, and show their ass to Trump or whatever.
Successful in weaponizing big tech and cryptocurrencies with the Genius Act.
Yeah,
From his perspective, he was winning, and this is this
to some extent, yeah.
ridiculous campaign in which he has been sucked into for reasons which I don't think we will know until quite a few years pass. This is going to have long-standing effects, long-term effects. Chris, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal, in the Financial Times, some wishful thinking articles in which
Oh,
the comparison
I love reading wishful thinking articles. They're so much fun to me.
was being made between what's happening now in Iran and Liberation Day last year. Remember when there was a spasm in the markets? The markets got panicky and jittery after the announcement of the huge tariffs that effectively suspended world trade for a week or so. And so the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal wishful thinking goes along the lines of, well, it didn't turn out that bad. Within a month or two or three, markets were back. The
Yeah,
economy.
this is like the I think this is just the fakeness of like our monetary system and how it's not tied to any basis in reality anymore. It's tied to hopes and dreams of like Wall Street executives. Like when he did that, the correct response of the markets was to tank. It really was. Like that was the correct response. But then he pulled back a little, and then they all overcorrected, in my opinion. And then every time he did it afterwards, they didn't do really anything, even though they still had, a negative impact on like our productive capabilities and stuff. Um, And so he kind of just keeps doing this where he does something outrageous to get everybody used to the outrageousness, and then he walks it back, and then everybody's like, okay, it's not that bad, and then he like keeps ramping it up again or whatever, like, and so I don't know. I feel like it's really just shows how like fake our money is at this point, our entire
He
system.
shook off all, concerns about recession. And well, maybe if this ends soon in the next few weeks, then we will again be able to proclaim in a couple of months that it was a silly thing that had happened, but
So silly.
world capitalism, U.S.-based capitalism, dollarized capitalism, proved resilient. Well, I don't think that this is possible. Not only because this war is not going.
It's resilient till it's not. The next crash, like, so capitalism produces recessions every 2 to 5 years. That's just an inherent part of capitalism. It's inevitable. Um, However, like it also produces like crashes every, like big crashes every like 20-ish years or so. Um, which like the last one I would say is like the financial crisis or whatever. So we're getting close. And it's like, I'm not saying it's exact or anything. It's like plus or minus 5 years or whatever, I would say. Uh, but the next crash, I think this next one's going to be like a really big one. I think it'll be like similar to the Great Depression, if potentially not worse or whatever. So, but who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe it'll just be a little crash. But it still happens every like 25 years or so, or 20, 25 years.
It went very quickly. I don't think. None of us has a crystal ball. But I think that Donald Trump has been well and truly caught in this trap that Netanyahu has set up for him. But the main point I want to make is that there is a world of difference between what happened last year with the tariffs and Liberation Day and now. And allow me to make the point about why it was that Liberation Day tariffs proved to be transient in terms of their effects, and why this one is not going to be transient for more or less the same reasons. So last year, when Trump came in with his gigantic tariffs, especially against the Chinese and so on, firstly, it was clear within a few weeks that demand in the United States for foreign exports was elastic enough so that much of the burden did not fall on American consumers.
He's an economist or former. I think he headed the former like I can't remember if it was Germany or what, but I think he was like in charge of like a very high up official in charge of the German economy at some point. So he's going to analyze this, I think, from a very economic perspective.
But it fell on importers. The second and very important, crucial reason why, in the end, Trump didn't suffer from Liberation Day is because at the same time as there was a recessionary wave, there was another wave in the opposite direction, a gigantic investment spree by big tech on AI. And that lifted the markets in a way that satisfied the Donald. The third reason is that tariffs actually worked from his perspective. Those tariffs managed to crowd into the United States substantial capital inflows. So I know lots of German companies that relocated to the United States, like BASF and Mercedes-Benz and so on. Japanese companies investing, Taiwanese companies investing. And the fourth important reason.
That's interesting. I would like to know more about that, because I didn't really think that those investments ever really I didn't think they really ever panned out as far as I know. That's where Donald Trump gets all those numbers like, oh, we're having over $1 trillion of investments or whatever. He always says that because he's made these like kind of verbal, sometimes handshaky type of deals with countries that they're going to do all this stuff to get their tariff rates lowered or whatever. But I was unaware. I was unaware that any of that had even happened yet. So I would have liked to hear more about that.
Why Liberation Day did not have long-lasting effects was that the central banks around the world, not just the Fed, were in the process of cutting interest rates, of loosening monetary policy. Now, compare and contrast with what's going on now. Firstly, Demand in the United States is not elastic to increases in gas prices. The vast majority of the very people, the blue collar workers that voted Trump in, are suffering exorbitant increases in their transport costs. Let's
It's true.
not forget that the average MAGA supporter, voter, travels 100 miles a day in very thirsty SUVs, cars, and that goes straight into
Yeah, we love our gas guzzlers, don't we, boys? Where my MAGA chuds at?
the increase in the gas price goes straight into their family budget. The second one, remember, the AI investment spree that saved Donald's bacon last year. Well, AI is
Bacon.
extremely energy intense.
That's true.
It's very hungry for electricity. So the
Ugh.
investment spree that we witnessed over the last 12 months is probably going to peter out because already there were qualms about the logic of that investment that was going so heavily into AI. But
So
now
like,
that AI is becoming so expensive to run and to train and all that,
it's still I just don't see it ever being as profitable as they expect it to be. I'm not saying it can't be profitable at all, but I think that it is just so overvalued.
well, that is going
And
to
he's right
reduce very
about this.
substantially the countervailing effects of more investment in AI. And beyond that, central banks. Central banks are already, because yields in 10-year bonds are rising, central banks either are going to increase now interest rates or they're not going to reduce them
Great.
according to the timeline that they had set out for themselves and which financial markets had already factored in.
Yeah, basically just undoing all of the things that Trump had been bragging about. So he won't have very much to brag about going into the midterms, if I had to guess.
And lastly, last year, this time, unemployment was not increasing. In the last 2 or 3 months, unemployment, both in the United States and in the United Kingdom, and are very much fair also in the European Union, are on the way up. So if you take all these factors together, uh, you'll see why I'm coming to the conclusion that this war, this inane war by Donald Trump, is even within the United States, not looking at Bangladesh or Japan as you were, very accurately portraying those economies as being in dire straits. The United States economy itself, which is what really matters to Donald Trump, the European economy, the British economy, the West in general, is entering a serious vortex of pain.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I still think that those other economies are going to be in more pain though. And I think they will cry uncle like even sooner than America. So like I think that this war will probably end or more is more likely to end based on those other countries coming to Donald Trump and being like, you got to stop this shit or whatever, versus like the American people. But it also it does kind of depend how long it drags out as well and how close to the midterms it gets. So, but yeah, that was a pretty good video. I like Giannis. He seems pretty. He seems like a little smarty pants, and he has a fun voice.